The biggest mistake in an early season Arizona bear hunt is assuming the hardest hitting rifle automatically gives you the best setup. It doesn't. Arizona can give you thick oak and manzanita at one moment, then open canyon country the next. That means rifle weight, recoil, handling, weather resistance, optic range, and bullet performance can matter just as much as raw cartridge power. A hard-kicking Magnum may give you more ballistic margin across a canyon, but that advantage means very little if you cannot shoot it confidently from a real field position. A compact brush rifle can feel perfect up close and quickly become limiting when the terrain opens up. So before we start, which matters more in your kind of bear hunting? Lower recoil for easier shooting, or more cartridge margin when distance and shot angle get tougher? These 5 setups answer that trade-off in very different ways, but only one offers the best overall balance for early season Arizona. At number 5, the Henry H10 All-Weather Pick Rail, chambered in 4570 Government, is the specialist in this list. It makes the most sense when the hunt is built around thick oak, manzanita, or hounds, where shots are likely to be close and the rifle needs to stay compact and simple. The Henry uses an 18.43-inch barrel, measures about 37.5 inches overall, and weighs roughly 7.1 pounds. Its hard chrome finish and synthetic furniture also fit the wet, dirty side of Arizona's monsoon season better than a traditional blued and walnut setup. The extended Picatinny rail gives you room for a low-power optic, which is exactly what this rifle needs. The big advantage here is not long-range ballistics. It is how quickly the rifle can be carried, mounted, and pointed when the terrain starts closing in. In a thick oak pocket, a high magnification scope can make a rifle slower because the field of view gets narrow and the sight picture takes longer to organize. That is why this setup works better when you resist the urge to turn it into something it is not. For this setup, the Leupold VX3 HD 1.5 to 5 by 20 illuminated scope keeps the sight picture wide at close range without adding unnecessary magnification. I would pair that with low rings, a solid sling, and skip a fixed bipod. This is not the rifle you choose to build around long canyon shots. The ammunition reference is Hornady Lever Evolution with a 325 grain FTX bullet. Hornady lists 2,000 feet per second from a 24-inch test barrel, so you should not assume the shorter Henry will produce that same velocity. That is one reason a 100-yard zero and a conservative range around 150 yards make more sense for this setup than stretching it on paper. That barrel length difference matters because it is easy to copy a factory velocity into a ballistic app and assume the result belongs to your own rifle. It may not. The Henry has an 18.43-inch barrel, and the published Hornady number comes from a 24-inch test barrel. Until you chronograph your own combination, the smart move is to treat the factory number as a reference and confirm your actual zero and drop on the range. Its strengths are compact handling, a heavy hunting bullet, and a configuration that fits short-range bear hunting very well. The trade-off is equally clear: more recoil, more trajectory drop, and less flexibility once the terrain opens up. For brush and hounds, that specialization is valuable. For a general Arizona early season rifle, it is why the Henry starts at number 5. There is also an ownership trade-off. Once you move outside that close-range role, the same features that make the Henry attractive begin to work against it. You have less trajectory margin than the bottleneck cartridges in the rest of the ranking, and recoil is still significant. If your plan includes frequent glassing across large canyons, you would be carrying a specialized rifle into a problem that rewards a more flexible one. So think of the Henry as the purpose-built option. If your early season hunt is dominated by hounds, thick brush, and short distances, it can climb much higher than number 5. But if you do not know exactly what kind of shot Arizona is going to give you, the next 4 rifles offer broader answers. At number 4, the Browning X-Bolt 2-Speed SPR, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, is the setup for hunters who expect Arizona to open up into real canyon country. This rifle uses a 22-inch barrel, weighs about 7 pounds, carries 3 rounds, and comes with Cerakote +5/8 24 muzzle threading. That combination keeps the rifle shorter than many traditional Magnum setups while still giving it the weather resistance and configuration you want when monsoon moisture, dust, and long glassing sessions are part of the hunt. This is the first setup where the rifle is being built around open country capability from the beginning. A 22-inch barrel keeps the package handier than a long, traditional Magnum hunting rifle, but the cartridge still brings significantly more recoil than the options around it. The benefit is that when range and wind grow, you have more ballistic margin to work with, provided you can shoot the rifle well enough to use it. The ammunition reference here is Federal Terminal Ascent with a 175-grain bullet. Federal lists a muzzle velocity of 3,030 feet per second and a G1 ballistic coefficient of 0.520. For this roll, that matters because the point of the setup is not simply more muzzle energy. It is preserving useful velocity and reducing the amount of correction required when distance and wind start working against you across open terrain. A higher starting velocity can reduce the amount of time the bullet spends in flight and make the trajectory more forgiving compared with slower options, but that does not eliminate the need to know the range or read the wind. The farther you shoot, the more a small error can matter. That is why the cartridge belongs in the hands of a hunter who has already proven the system from field positions, instead of someone who bought a Magnum as a substitute for practice. The optic is a Vortex Razor HD LHT 3-15 by 42. At roughly 19.1 ounces, it adds more weight than the smaller scopes on some of the other rifles, but the additional magnification and dialing capability make more sense here because this is the dedicated Canyon option. A 200-yard zero and a conservative practical cap around 400 yards keep the setup focused on realistic field use, rather than turning cartridge capability into permission to take extreme shots. The reason this rifle is only number 4 is recoil. A roughly 7-pound rifle, firing 300 Winchester Magnum, can demand much more from the shooter than the cartridge chart suggests. If that recoil reduces practice volume or creates a flinch, the extra ballistic margin can become a disadvantage. That is the central trade-off of this setup. The cartridge gives you more capability at distance, but the rifle is light enough that the shooter still has to pay for that capability every time the trigger breaks. A hunter who is comfortable with Magnum recoil may see that as a reasonable price. A hunter who starts anticipating the shot may be better served by a smaller cartridge that allows more consistent practice and cleaner execution. For an experienced hunter who already shoots Magnums well, this setup can be excellent in open country. But as an all-around early-season Arizona bear rifle, its specialization keeps it behind the more balanced options still ahead. At number 3, the Savage 110 Trail Hunter Lite chambered in 7mm 08 Remington is the setup for hunters who want to keep recoil under control without giving up a serious big-game rifle. Savage pairs this configuration with a 20-inch barrel, which helps keep the rifle manageable when the day involves steep climbs, brush, and long periods on foot. That shorter package also makes sense in Arizona because early-season terrain can shift quickly from tight cover to open slopes. The real advantage, though, is shootability. 7mm 08 gives you useful hunting performance without the recoil impulse of the larger 30 caliber options higher on this list. That matters more than many hunters admit. Recoil does not only affect how a rifle feels at the bench. It can affect how much you practice, how quickly you recover your sight picture, how relaxed you stay behind the rifle, and how consistently you press the trigger from awkward positions. A cartridge that looks slightly less impressive on a chart can become the better field choice if it lets you shoot with more control. For ammunition, this setup uses Hornady Superformance with a 139-grain CX bullet. The CX is a monolithic expanding hunting bullet, and the load family is built around higher published velocity without turning this rifle into a Magnum. For the hunter who is sensitive to recoil, that matters because a rifle you can practice with comfortably is usually easier to shoot well from kneeling, prone, or a field rest when the opportunity finally comes. A Vortex Razor HD LH 2-10 by 40 keeps the optic in the same spirit. It weighs about 15.4 ounces, gives you a useful low end for closer cover, and still provides enough magnification for a careful shot across a moderate canyon. A 200-yard zero and a conservative practical cap around 300 yards keep the setup simple. The 2-power low end is especially useful when the terrain tightens up. You keep more field of view and can acquire the animal faster than you could with a scope that starts at 4 or 5 power. At the other end, 10 power is plenty for a deliberate shot at the kind of distance this setup is supposed to cover. The point is not to buy magnification you will rarely use. It is to buy an optic range that matches the rifle. The Trail Hunter Lite also makes sense for the hunter who values hiking efficiency. A light rifle does not automatically mean a better rifle, because a little mass can help stability and reduce recoil. But when you spend hours climbing and moving through steep country, every extra pound has a cost. This setup tries to keep that cost low without moving so far toward ultralight that the rifle becomes unpleasant to shoot. The limitation is that this is not the option I would choose if the entire hunt were built around hard quartering angles or the longest possible canyon shots. The lighter recoil comes with less bullet mass and less margin than the 30-06 or 300 Winchester Magnum. That does not mean the 7mm 08 is somehow inadequate. It means the setup rewards good shot selection. Broadside and slight quartering presentations make more sense than trying to use cartridge power to justify a poor angle. The hunter still needs to visualize the path through the heart and lungs and avoid letting the rifle's capability become an excuse to take a shot that should have been passed. But for a hunter who hikes hard, practices often, or simply shoots better with less recoil, the Savage earns number 3 because it turns controllability into a real field advantage. At number 2, the Tikka T3X Lite Stainless, chambered in 30-06 Springfield, is the mountain all-rounder of this list. It gives up some of the recoil advantage of the Savage, but gains versatility through a heavier hunting load and a cartridge that fits a wider range of big game use after the Arizona bear season is over. The exact setup here uses a 22.4-inch barrel. That length gives the 30-06 a useful middle ground between mountain rifle portability and a more conventional hunting barrel length. The synthetic stock is easy to care for in rough conditions, and the stainless configuration makes sense for a hunt where monsoon moisture, dust, and sudden weather can all be part of the same day. The Tikka's role in this ranking is broader than simply being a more powerful version of the Savage. It is the rifle for the hunter who wants one lightweight bolt gun to cover bear, deer, and elk without moving all the way into Magnum recoil. That broader use case changes the value equation because the rifle is not being judged only on one Arizona hunt. The load here is Federal trophy bonded tip with a 180-grain bullet. Federal lists 2,700 feet per second, a G1 ballistic coefficient of 0.500, and a minimum terminal performance velocity of 1,600 feet per second. The bonded construction and heavier bullet give this setup more penetration margin than lighter, softer deer-oriented loads when the shot path has to deal with rib or shoulder before reaching the vital area. That minimum terminal performance velocity is also a useful reminder of how to think about distance. Instead of asking only how much muzzle energy the cartridge produces, you can ask whether the bullet is still inside the performance window its manufacturer designed it around. Even then, that does not create an automatic ethical range. The shooter still has to hold accurately, account for wind, and wait for a good presentation. For the optic, a loopholed VX3 HD 3.5 to 10 by 40 keeps the rifle from becoming unnecessarily heavy. The scope weighs about 13.1 ounces, while 10 power magnification is plenty for the practical distances this setup is meant to cover. A 200-yard zero and a conservative working limit around 350 yards makes sense for a hunter who has already proven that distance from real field positions. The trade-off is recoil. 30-06 is noticeably more demanding than 7mm 08, especially in a light rifle. That recoil is manageable for many shooters, but it should not be dismissed. If the rifle is light and the load is a 180-grain hunting load, a long bench session can become counterproductive. The better practice plan is short, high-quality strings from the positions you may actually use, with attention to the first cold-bore shot, instead of trying to prove toughness through volume. Compared with the Browning, The Tikka gives up some open canyon ballistic margin, but asks less of the shooter in recoil. Compared with the Savage, it gives you a heavier bullet and a little more versatility at the cost of a stronger recoil impulse. Compared with the Henry, it is much better once distances begin to stretch beyond close cover. But that combination of manageable mountain rifle weight, a robust 180-grain hunting load, useful reach, and broader big game versatility is exactly why the Tikka climbs to number 2. At number 1, the Ruger American Gen 2 chambered in .308 Winchester wins because it gives the widest group of Arizona bear hunters the best balance of shootability, useful range, handling, and cost. The 20-inch barrel keeps the rifle compact enough for oak and manzanita without turning it into a dedicated brush gun. Ruger lists this configuration with a 3-round magazine and an MSRP of $769. That leaves considerably more of the budget available for the optic, ammunition, range time, and good glass than the premium Canyon setup at number 4. That budget point is more important than it sounds. A hunter can spend thousands more on the rifle and still gain less in the field than they would from better practice, a dependable rangefinder, good binoculars, and a shooting support they actually know how to use. The Ruger is not winning because it is cheap. It is winning because the lower rifle cost does not prevent the rest of the system from being built properly. For ammunition, the reference load is Federal Terminal Ascent with a 175-grain bullet. Federal lists 2,600 feet per second and a G1 ballistic coefficient of .520. Combined with a 200-yard zero, that gives this setup a practical envelope suited to the moderate canyon distances this ranking is built around, while the bonded hunting bullet keeps the focus on penetration and controlled expansion rather than raw muzzle energy numbers. The .308 also fits the logic of this hunt because it sits in the middle. It does not give you the same trajectory and wind margin as the .300 Winchester Magnum, but it also does not bring the same recoil burden in a lightweight hunting rifle. It carries more bullet weight than the 7mm 08 reference load, while staying easier for many hunters to practice with than a 30-06 or Magnum. The optic is a Leupold VX3H, D2.5 to 8x36. The low end stays useful when cover tightens up, while 8 power magnification is enough for deliberate shooting toward the conservative 300-yard limit used for this setup. Low rings, a 2-point sling, and a removable bipod keep the system straightforward. That 2.5 power low end is one of the reasons the Ruger works so well as the all-around choice. It gives you more field of view than the higher starting optics on the mountain and canyon setups, but you still have enough magnification on top to place a careful shot across moderate open ground. You are not carrying a specialist scope, you are carrying an optic that can move with the terrain. The Ruger is not the winner in every version of an Arizona bear hunt. The Savage is the better answer for a recoil-sensitive hunter. The Browning gains the advantage when an experienced Magnum shooter is deliberately hunting open canyon country, and the Henry becomes far more attractive when hounds and close brush define the entire hunt. The Tikka deserves special mention because it is the closest challenger. If you want one rifle that will continue to serve as a lightweight elk, deer, and bear rifle across a wider set of hunts, the 30-06 setup may be the better personal choice. The Ruger wins this ranking because the question is narrower. Early season Arizona black bear for the broadest group of hunters. The Ruger also gives up some wind and distance margin to the .300 Winchester Magnum, and its 20-inch barrel should not be assumed to reproduce Federal's published velocity without verification. That last point applies to every rifle in the ranking. Factory ballistic data is a starting point, not a substitute for confirming your own rifle. Different barrel lengths, ammunition lots, temperatures, and individual chambers can change actual velocity. Before the hunt, the important number is the one you have verified from your rifle, followed by a 0 you have confirmed with a cold barrel. The Ruger's value advantage also lets you spend money where the hunt may benefit more. A reliable rangefinder helps keep distance honest. Binoculars help you find and evaluate animals before the rifle ever comes out. A good sling makes the rifle easier to carry. A bipod or other support can turn an unstable field position into a controlled one. Those are not glamorous upgrades, but together they can improve the entire process. The Ruger's biggest strength is that it does not force you to predict the terrain perfectly. If the day stays in brush, the rifle remains compact, and the scope stays usable at low power. If the country opens to a moderate canyon shot, the cartridge and 8-power optic still give you room to work. If the hunt turns into a long hike, the package remains reasonable to carry. That flexibility is what the other rifles trade away in order to become better at one specific job. But for the hunter who needs one setup to handle the widest mix of early-season Arizona conditions without excessive recoil, weight, or cost, the Ruger American Gen 2 and 308 Winchester deliver the strongest overall package. That is why it takes number 1. Early season Arizona bear hunting rewards balance more than raw power. The right rifle has to carry well, handle changing terrain, stay manageable under recoil, and still deliver the bullet performance and practical range your hunt actually demands. The Henry is the specialist for brush and hounds. The Browning is the open canyon option for the hunter who already knows how to manage magnum recoil. The Savage is the low recoil choice for the hunter who values hiking and controllability. The Tikka is the mountain all-rounder with broader big game versatility. And the Ruger wins because it covers the widest middle ground without forcing the hunter to pay for specialization they may never need. Before you hunt, remember that Arizona bear seasons can close early when female harvest limits are reached in a hunt area, so unit status should be checked before you head out. Early season heat and monsoon weather also deserve the same attention as the rifle. Hydration, lighting, road access, and a recovery plan are part of the hunt whether the rifle costs $700 or $4,000. And whatever rifle you choose, do not let the cartridge decide the shot for you. Wait for a clear, vital area presentation. Know the range, understand the wind, make sure the backstop is safe, and stay inside the distance you have actually proven from a field position. That is why the Ruger American Gen 2 in 308 Winchester takes the top spot for the broadest group of hunters. It is not the most specialized rifle here, and that is exactly the point. Which setup would you trust most in Arizona? The Ruger for all-around use, the Tikka for greater versatility, the Savage for softer recoil, the Browning for open canyon country, or the Henry for close brush and hounds. If you want more evidence-based hunting rifle and ammunition rankings like this, subscribe and come back for the next one. Stay safe, know your limits, and hunt responsibly.